everyone. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Allison.
And this is Nerd of the Week, a randomly generated fandom podcast. The beautiful, wonderful generator, could you remind us what the word is for this week?
Praise be to the generator to tell us the word.
The word of the week is mastermind.
Mastermind.
Woo!
So, what definition do you think, or what are the words that form a definition for mastermind?
There's probably a lot of them. I don't feel very confident that my definition is going to be very close to Google's on this, but I guess we'll see. So I think mastermind is a noun or like not necessarily an adjective, but like a superlative.
Superlative? I don't know what a superlative is.
It's like in yearbooks where they're like, and best hair, and most likely to be a president, and most likely to end up on their parents' couch. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I got you. I understand now.
Like, you could be like, a mastermind of the year. I don't know. My yearbook didn't have that, but it seems like something that you could do.
Okay.
Anyway, it kind of seems like mastermind is a person who is regarded as a genius or having higher intellectual reasoning prowess to come up with elaborate schemes to fulfill their goals.
Okay. It was much shorter than yours.
Oh my, okay.
Well, okay, there's a short one and a long one when you expand out, because when you click the definition, and then it gives you, like, the long ones. But the short one is a noun, a person with outstanding intellect. But it also says someone who plans or directs an ingenious and complex scheme or enterprise. So you were pretty spot on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
cool.
then apparently it can also be a verb, but it's just masterminding, ing. So it's the same thing, but with, like, the verb form.
That sounds made up.
Right? I'm masterminding a plan. That just feels like me BSing my way through some stuff.
Yeah. That doesn't
Also,
sound real.
Google sometimes gives us, like, statistics for, like, uses of the word.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and every once in a while I just get confused because, like, there is, like, data to the 1800s, and it starts to skyrocket in the 1960s, and then, like, the use is now much higher now. But for a very short period in, like, 1840, there's, like, a little blip. And I want to know what happened in 1840 that caused Mastermind to be more in style.
That would be an interesting thing to look up. Join us on our other fictional podcast where we look up all of this stuff and we tell you all about it. We really need to start that podcast. We literally reference it every time.
I know. The podcast doesn't exist. One day it will exist and people will be like, what are they talking about? Like, we're just going to build a podcasting empire. It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll go on tour and just say definitions at people.
Just read people the definitions of words to increase the literacy of people.
That might be good.
Yeah.
That might be good. Well,
so
anyway.
Anywho's it.
You go first.
I am bringing one of my favorite movies, Megamind.
I thought that movie was going to come up for this. Yeah.
So it's a 2010 animated movie by Paramount and DreamWorks Animation, featuring the voices of Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, David Cross, and Brad Pitt.
Jonah Hill?
Yeah, Jonah Hill's the bad guy.
Who's Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt is the kind of antagonist to the character Metro Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that.
So, so he is Metro Man. So we start with a cold open of Megamind being like, you're probably kind of like a record scratch. You're probably wondering how I got here situation as you see him just kind of like falling to his death. And he's like, something, it can't get worse. Oh, wait, I'm falling to my death. So I guess like this is the worst it could be. How did I get here? So I guess we should start at the beginning. And then there's like a flash cut to tiny baby Megamind. And Megamind is an alien who's like kind of blue. He's like a light blue color and with like a giant head and like big eyes. And his
Not
parents,
at all concerning.
not at all concerning or like evil looking at all. And he his parents are sticking him into a pod, like a space pod thing, and he intros with like, look at me, I'm only 8 days old and still with my parents. How pathetic is that? Like being sarcastic because he's getting like kicked off the planet because his home planet was getting sucked into a black hole, and he gets sent to Earth in the like Superman Goku situation where like you're in a little pod sent as a baby to another planet, and he's talking about how his parents said he was destined for something but he doesn't know what, and so he's like, is this my great destiny? And then the individual who plays or Brad Pitt's voice character, Metro Man, is also being sent because his home planet was also getting sucked into the same black hole, and he pushes Mega Man off course. So Metro Man lands into this like big mansion with this like beautiful estate and then gets adopted by these rich people, and Mega Man ends up in a prison. He crash lands into a prison cell courtyard, and the inmates there are like, can we keep him? And like so there's this like back and forth between how their rivalry began, where Metro Man gets to have like all these cool things and he gets to be like the superhero and he's charming and he has great hair, and then his Megamind gets raised by learning what's good and evil. So he's like, the inmates are literally holding like flashcards and it's like cop, and they're like shaking their head no, and then it was like thief with like the classic like black and white striped shirt, and they're like shaking their head yes. So he was like learning the importance of good and evil.
Oh my.
And eventually he gets to go to shul instead of school, because the thing I like about Megamind is that he's displayed as this guy with like great genius, but he messes up words all the time. And it's very much the situation of like, you've read these words so many times and you know what that is, but no one's ever spoken these words to you. So he'll say things like, the city's name is Metro City, but he calls it Metrocity. And and at one point he uses, instead of melancholy, he calls it melancholy. And I just emotionally relate to that. There was the word epitome, I was convinced was like epitome for like ever. And someone finally was like, what are you saying?
Epitome.
But it gets set up so he goes to this like one-room schoolhouse thing where he eventually gets to not be in prison and goes to school, but he has to go to school in like an orange jumpsuit, and he is considered weird and all this, and he tries to fit in, but all of his experiments go haywire, as mad experiments tend to do, and then Metro Man will like save the day. So Metro Man gets all these like gold stars for like putting him in the corner and picking him last and all that stuff, but Mega Man decides, all right, fine, this is the beginning of our glorious rivalry, I'm supposed to be bad. And so he gets more and more, or better at being a supervillain. And more better. We're getting better at being a supervillain because he's developing his supervillain skills. And then Megamind, I keep wanting to call him Mega Man, which is a video game franchise, and not the the movie.
A little different, yeah.
But Megamind also has his sidekick, who is like this giant piranha head that he got in a fishbowl when he was sent to Earth, who's voiced by David Cross, and it's Minion, and he builds him like a mech suit that he can walk around in. So, and it's his only friend, and together they cause a bunch of trouble as kids. And then as they get older, Megamind starts to describe like their glorious rivalry, and Metro Man would win some, and then Megamind would get close to winning, and then Metro Man would win some more, and then Megamind would get put into prison, but it was okay. It was a fun rivalry. They then get to Megamind in his jail cell, which is also like, I'm pretty sure where he grew up, because it's like all colored and decorated, and there's like rainbows and stuff in the room, and there's a chair, and the warden comes up, and he is voiced by J.K. Simmons, which is just chef's kiss. I'm always happy when J.K. Simmons is in a movie. But he is like mocking Megamind a little bit, and Megamind is telling him, well, could you tell me the time? Because I wouldn't want to be late for the great unveiling of Metro Man's. I think they were making like a museum to him in his honor with this like giant statue of Metro Man and all that, and they were having a big celebration, and Mega Man had gotten a present from Metro Man that was like a watch that was like to count your 84 life sentences in prison. And so the warden puts the watch on, like, I'm not giving you this watch, I'm gonna keep it. And the watch is actually a device to like change your appearance. So when he puts it on, he starts to look like Mega Man or Megamind, and he then starts walking through the prison and is like just barking orders at some of the guards, and they look at him and it looks like Megamind is walking through the prison. So then they grab him and throw him in the cell, and then Megamind scans the warden real fast, so then he looks like the warden, and he like sneaks out of the building.
Nice.
And and then meanwhile, the reporter, who's voiced by Tina Fey, Roxanne Ritchie, is doing like a opening on the grand ceremony and the opening of the I don't know what the name of the thing is, but basically it's like a big celebratory day, like party for him. And so she's doing a reporting thing, and we get the first shot of Hal, who eventually turns into our villain, who is like clearly like in love with Roxanne and keeps trying to flirt with her, and is just coming off a little too strong and a little too creepy. And Roxanne's like, yeah, okay, goodbye. And then we get Metro Man like flies in, and he is like, thanks everyone so much for all this. And we get the scene of him like having a moment of an existential crisis where he's like, every day I ask myself who I would be if I wasn't here to like save you. And he like kind of like looks off into the middle distance for a second, and then someone in the crowd shouts, I love you, Metro Man. And he's like, and I love you, random citizen. Which is one of the good memes that came out of this movie. And while he's having the celebration, everyone realizes that Roxanne has been kidnapped by Megamind. Because everyone thinks that Roxanne and Metro Man are dating, which, spoiler alert, they are not, but they are good friends. And Megamind is using Roxanne as bait to get Metro Man into the observatory so that he can defeat him again. And so Megamind like walks up to Roxanne. He's like, I've kidnapped you, mwahaha. And Roxanne's like, yeah, okay. And he's like, wait, but you should be screaming. And she's like, you kidnap me like once a week. Like, can I get my like evil guy's punch card, or my kidnapping punch card punch, so that I can go home? And then he goes, you should know very well of all people that we discontinued that promotion years ago.
Oh my god. Just a regular everyday business plan.
get kidnapped by Megamind. And then he's like, you should be worried about this. And she's like, God, you're so predictable. You're going to do this and this. And so every time she says something, he's like, is predictable? Is this predictable? And she's like, yep, the snapping alligators. And like a pool opens up underneath her with like the alligators. And there's like big gears and stuff that are coming at her and like looking all scary. And then she goes, the spider's new. And he turns around like, the spider. Oh, and there's like a spider that's like slowly like just coming down on a web. And then he's like, oh yes, the speeder of death. Like trying to act like this was totally his plan. And she's like, can I just go home? So then he goes, no, I gotta use you to lure Metro Man into my evil trap. So then he pops up on this like big projector screen that I don't know where he got or how he put it up there in time. But then Metro Man and him have like this back and forth banter of like, I am evil, and they go back and forth like, all right, revenge is justice and beautiful, and he's like, but revenge should be on a plate served cold, and they like go back and forth with these big stupid cheesy lines, and Roxanne's like looking between the both of them and is like, girls, you're both pretty, can I go home now? And she's like, Metro Man, we're in the old observatory. So he goes and flies over to the observatory, where he kicks it in and then realizes she's not there. And Mega Man's like, haha, you've fallen for my trap. Can you withstand the power of the sun? And he like shoots the sun like a laser beam at the old observatory, because he's got a fake observatory that he set up Roxanne in, which is directly above his secret lair, which is super not so secret, but it's fine. And Mega Man is like trying to get out, and he's like, oh no, you master genius, you figured it out. And he goes, I what? And he's like, copper, this is clearly lined with copper. And he goes, copper is your weakness? And then he's like, yes, it weakens my power, you know this. And then like the laser beam hits the observatory, and then everyone's watching in like a stunned silence for a moment, and he looks, and then they start to see like a smoke cloud come out of the laser, or the smoke plume that came from the laser beam hitting the observatory. And he's like, oh look, see, he's fine. And everyone's like, oh yeah, he's fine. And then it hits Megamind, and it's a skeleton like wrapped in Megamind's or Metro Man's cloak. And they're like, wait, I won? I'm not supposed to win. What? So he then realizes he won. And so he, not knowing what to do with himself, kind of goes on a spree of the city, and he like plunders a bunch of stuff. He steals a bunch of like precious art and money from the bank, and then ends up like in town hall, like sitting where the mayor does. And then you see him and Minion like celebrating through like a couple of days of this, and then he like slowly just like gets more and more sad, and then it culminates to him watching one of those like plastic bird things that like dips down to drink out of the water and come back up. And he's like, I understand you, plastic bird, always thirsty, but never satisfied. What is your thirst like? And Minion comes in and he's like singing along to a song, and he's like, don't interrupt me, Minion. I'm having an existential crisis with the plastic bird toy. And Minion tells him to maybe go visit the museum with Metro Man in it to try and just like cheer himself up and maybe blow that up for getting some energy out. So he does. He goes, and next scene is him kind of sitting, and it's like this big giant tower that's like very, very tall, like stories tall. And there's like a walkway that goes around Metro Man's statue, and he's sitting there like talking to Metro Man about how they had all these good times and bad times, and he didn't think he'd miss Metro Man. Meanwhile, Roxanne is doing like a expose story on Metro Man, and like maybe we took advantage of him, or like maybe we didn't know how good we had it. And she, to avoid talking to Hal more, goes into the museum afterwards and then goes up to the platform where she runs into one of the curators, Bernard, who she's like, oh, you probably thought I was weird talking to myself. And Bernard says, I'm not allowed to insult guests directly. And then we cut back to Megamind. God, I'm going to do that the whole time.
It's okay.
Megamind. And he is like, well, it was nice having this chat. Now, goodbye. And he like presses a button and it's on like a timer for a detonator for the museum to be exploded. And starts to walk away. And then he hears Roxanne. And then it was like, oh crap, I gotta run away from her because she can't know I'm here being sad. And he runs into Bernard and then scans Bernard with his watch and then takes over his persona. And then he has this thing like a dehydration gun where he dehydrates Bernard and turns him into like this tiny little cube and like shoves Bernard in his pocket. And then Roxanne runs into Bernard and goes, oh, I thought I heard someone else here. And Bernard's like, yeah, we should leave. We are doing some renovation where we're removing the ceiling and all the walls. And she's like, oh, that sounds expensive. And then they go down in the elevator and they talk a little bit. And they bond over their love of Metro Man.
Oh, no.
And so there's like a brief moment where they're talking. And then Megamind gets... there's this moment where he's like... She goes... I wish there was like a reverse button or like a do-over button. And Megamind goes, I looked into it. The science is impossible. and then he gets her in a taxi and sends her away before the museum explodes. And then Megamind has sparked from this conversation the ingenious plan of creating a new superhero to fight because he misses the thrill of the fight. And they he goes back to Minion and explains to Minion that they need to start developing a new superhero. And Minion's just confused. He's like, aren't we supposed to be like bad guys? Why are we making a hero? And Megamind's kind of like skirts the issue, but is like, for my brand or something, we'll just, build up this character and then I have something to fight. And Roxanne calls the cell phone of Bernard and he answers and she's like, you ignited something in me last night. I'm gonna try and be that hero. And I found Megamind's lair. And he's like, you found my lair? I mean, you found his lair? And so she sneaks into his lair and has dragged Hal along with her to record everything. Uh-huh. And there's this very Three Stooges-esque style scene of Megamind pretending to both be Bernard and Megamind. So he shows up as Bernard to help Roxanne. She's like, how did you get here so quick? And he's like, I was speed walking. And she goes, in a suit? He's like, it's called formal speed walking, but that's not important. And then
was she buying any of that?
She was
or is she suspicious?
She wasn't really paying that much attention to him because she was so excited to have found it that it flies over her head completely. And so she manages to steal some documents and some secret plans and things like that before Megamind remembers that he has security. So he sends his security drones to chase after them. And there's a chase scene between the two of them, with the two of them, where he's also pretending to chase them, and then they get out of the situation. But Roxanne had found the gun that he had that had the infuser of Metro Man's superhero powers, and it accidentally gets fired off, and then it hits Hal instead of the intended target that they were going to go find, a guy who is actually a good person instead of Hal, who's kind of a jerk. Mm-hmm. And then so Megamind has to then go follow Hal and figure out who he is, and then decides that he's perfect because Megamind doesn't really know who a good person is. And they're going to teach Hal how to be a superhero. And they dress up as Hal's space dad, and Minion dresses up as Hal's space stepmom. And I'm pretty sure the space dad, like, costume that he gives himself is supposed to look like Marlon Brando's Superman's dad situation from like the older Superman movies. And then he talks with like a really thick lisp that you really can't understand half the words he's saying. And he's like, "You have been given unfathomable power." What kind of power? Unfathomable is power without fathom. And this movie is just all references, and it kills me. They have a training montage where they try to train Hal into being like a superhero and like all the things and how to do witty banter. But like Hal just like clearly is not good at this, and he is like melting the fake Megamind's character, like cardboard cutouts and stuff, and is just like very aggressive and not superhero material at all. Meanwhile, Megamind is also going on dates with Roxanne, where they're like looking up stuff, trying to figure out how to defeat Megamind, how to do all this stuff, and they're like slowly like having like cute moments where they're like flirting and falling in love, and it's really squishy and adorable. And Minion realizes that this is happening, and Minion tells Megamind that he needs to get over it and that she's going to eventually find out. And he's like, "That's why I'm lying. The goal is for her not to find out." And Minion's like, "But the bad guy doesn't get the girl." And so they have a fight, and Minion leaves. And I love their relationship because they will say like, "Code, get out of my life. Go, Code. Okay, I will. Code." Instead of like having like an actual code name for things, they'll just say the word code before the sentence they're going to say. And that's kind of like their entire relationship. They're just two doofuses having a fun time. And then Megamind's all like
just
grumpy.
like us. Sorry, that was delayed.
Two doofuses having a good time recording a podcast. Megamind then goes on a date immediately after this with Roxanne, and his watch malfunctions. And he is then now his true self, and Roxanne realizes that she has been duped, and they have a big fight. And so she leaves him like out in the rain, and then he loses track of the invisible car because it's raining, and so he has to walk home. And then he decides, all right, that's it, I'm gonna fight Hal and like have our big superhero battle. So he puts on his elaborate outfit that Minion had made before for him called the Black Mamba. And then he like,
why?
I don't know, it's Minion. He was having a fun time.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything beyond that. There might be like a joke or something that I don't understand there, but so he goes to try to like be like, "I heard there was a new superhero around," trying to like goad Hal out, but he can't. And then he shows up to fight Hal like after like an entire day of like waiting for a battle. Nothing happens, so he goes to Hal's apartment and he knocks out the wall, and it's like, "Hello, what you doing?" Hal's like sitting on the couch playing video games, like, "Oh, hey, also I have a door, you didn't have to come through my wall." And Megamind realizes that Hal has been using his superpowers to get money from banks and stuff, and he's like stolen a bike, and he's doesn't have any integrity. And so Megamind then like shows him that he was Space Dad and that he was dating Roxanne, and so Hal's starts to fight him. And at first, Megamind's all excited. He's like, yes, the thrill of the battle. But Hell's like very vicious and like has this intense fight between the two of them. And Megamind realizes that he's going to lose and that copper isn't actually a weakness for Hell. And he's like, but the copper should have worked. Why can you break out of it? So then he runs away and goes to Roxanne to try to explain what happened. And Roxanne's like, why are you coming to me? Like, he's like, but you're the smartest guy or person I know, and you might know where Metro Man's secret lair is because I don't know what to do. And they go to out on the outskirts of the city where Metro Man had taken their old schoolhouse and put it out on a little hill. And then underneath that is like this underground like man cave situation with like all of Metro Man's favorite stuff. And they discover that Metro Man is still alive.
Oh.
And
convenient.
Yeah. And he's got like a scraggly beard, like he's in like a big giant robe and like fuzzy slippers, and he was just like sneaking out to or like in a different room, and he comes out and he like sees the two of them like looking at a glass of ice with some ice cubes, and they're like, why are the ice cubes still like are like not melted? And then he's like, oh hey guys, how's it going? And like, what do you mean you're not dead? And Metro Man had realized that he hadn't been able to or hadn't been allowed to be anyone else but the savior of this city, and he wanted time to work on his music. And they're like, your music? And then he like plays the guitar like really shoddily.
Oh no.
And they're like, yeah, keep working on that, bud. And so they're trying to convince him to, you know, help with Megamind's mistake and to help them defeat Titan because Titan's the villain name. And Metro Man's like, I'm out. I've chosen to be dead and I'm going to stay dead, but it's all up to you now, buddy. And so Megamind's like, but I can't, you know, be a hero. And he's like, just do what you're good at. And so then we see Hal kidnaps Roxanne, and they set up like this whole thing so that they can try to get him more on the outskirts of town, and Megamind's gonna go into this like glorious battle. And my favorite scene of the whole movie is Roxanne telling Hal, you're supposed to be a hero, and Hal being like, no, I'm a supervillain. And then there's like this big like showboaty lights, and like all of his little drones turn into like this big cloud and like a bigger version of Megamind's head, and he's like, oh, you're a villain, all right, just not a super one. And he's like, what's the difference? And then it's Bad to the Bone, I think was the song that plays. It's got a great like series of music, but he's like, what's the difference? Presentation. And then it's like doo doo doo. And it's just this big, goofy, ridiculous scene. And then they go into a fight where Megamind gets, like, basically beaten the crap out of, but he gets hit into the invisible car where he left his diffuser gun. And so he finds it, and then he uses it to diffuse or, like, pull out the, like, superhero juice or whatever he put into Hal. And we kind of go back to the beginning of the movie with him like falling and then him having dehydrated and rehydrated himself so that when he hit the ground, he just landed in some water that rehydrated him, and he diffuses Hal and then saves the day. And he gets everyone's cheering and happy, and then the warden decides not to arrest him because Hal is now clearly the supervillain, and then Megamind gets to be the hero of the city, and he gets to get the girl and have a date with Roxanne, and it's so cute.
And does Metro Man get to keep working on his music? Does he get better?
You know what? No one ever tells us if he gets better, but
it's not like one of those like post-credit scenes.
No.
Okay.
The post-credit scene is actually the guy the actual Bernard getting rehydrated, where he just like pops back out and then like goes away. Like, in case you were worried about Bernard, he's okay. There is like a cute scene where Mega Man or Mega Mind is getting to have like the same like ceremony that Metro Man did at the beginning of the movie, and then we see someone like poke a guy's shoulder like, hey, my kid can't see, and it's Metro Man like in a hood, but he had come out to see Mega Mind's like coronation ceremony situation. It was very cute.
That is cute. Yay. That's adorable. I've only seen that movie once, but it's a good one.
I love it. There's a bunch of like zinger one-liners that I just live for, that I quote more than I realize. And they got like Back in Black, Highway to Hell. They have a good music in there too. That's just super fun.
Did you say what studio made it?
It was DreamWorks.
DreamWorks, okay. Well, that's a good one. And when I kept saying in my head the word Mastermind while I was thinking of what to bring for this one, Megamind kept like popping in there. Because they're obviously so similar sounding.
Yeah, and he's an evil mastermind genius who comes up with shenanigans for his intense battles with Metro Man in Metrocity.
Metrocity. That's great. I like that character quirk. That's it's an unusual one. It's a choice they made there, and they stuck with it. It's good.
It becomes plot relevant because when Megamind is fighting Hal, he pretends to be Metro Man for a minute, but he refers to Metro City as Metrocity, and then Hal realizes that it's Megamind and not Metro Man. But it's a fun quirk, and I don't know if it was intentional for like the kids who have read a lot of words but don't know how they pronounce them, but that's what it read to me as, and it cracks me up.
That's really good. And I like that interpretation of it too. It hadn't occurred to me. I thought he was just silly.
I mean, he's also that. He's also voiced by Will Ferrell, so like it's fine.
I should probably tell you my quote.
Okay.
Which I do have. It's here on my phone somewhere. Okay, I've found the quote. What if I told you I'm a mastermind? And now you're mine. It was all by design, 'cause I'm a mastermind.
Okay. That sounds familiar.
You might have heard it. I've not heard it on the internet, but you might have heard it on the internet.
Okay. I think I know, but I will bring it up at the end.
Okay.
If you know what Allison's quote is, feel free to tweet at us or let us know on Facebook with the hashtag Nerd of the Week or hashtag NOTWP. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we would. Have we heard from anyone yet?
I don't think so. No, that's not true. My friend McKenna, who listens to our podcast, hi McKenna, she will post on our Facebook. So that was a lie. There is some people who do.
Yay, McKenna! All right, listener, who's next? Is it you, person who's listening? All right, anyway, I'm going to talk now.
Okay, that sounds great.
So I have brought what I think is my new favorite movie, against all odds, and it is Bullet Train.
Yeah, Bullet Train. Another Brad Pitt movie.
Yes, when you said Brad Pitt was in this one, I thought, what a weird theme that we had today.
Mastermind equals Brad Pitt. Got it.
So Brad Pitt is actually the main protagonist character in my movie. Mm-hmm. He plays the not really secret agent. What would you call him?
He's kind of like a spy, hitman situation.
Yeah, hitman's more like the right thing. So he is in Japan, and apparently he's taken some time off from his job, but he's talking to his handler, who is Maria Beadle, who's played by Sandra Bullock.
Yep.
Classic. They never say her name in the movie, which I think is interesting. But I'm looking at the cast list, and she is Maria
And
Beadle.
she's named in the cast? Okay.
Yeah. She's not just the handler or whatever.
Okay. Interesting.
But anyway, so she's on the phone with Brad Pitt, and his new name for this operation is going to be Ladybug, because Ladybug is supposed to be lucky. But I think now looking at the cast list, you know, she's Maria Beadle, and this is spelled Beetle, and then he's Ladybug, like a beetle. Like, it all goes together there in my head.
They were being
I don't know
clever.
if that was intentional or not, but whatever. Anyway, it's funny because he opens and he's like, you know, been working with my therapist Barry, and he's introduced me to a new sense of calm, and I feel less reactive to situations and more tolerant to people's shortcomings, and I'm ready for this. And then he goes to this locker, and she's like, he's collecting all of the things that he had ordered for this job. He takes like a little sleeping potion. On the phone, Maria's like, "You didn't order the sleeping
You're not
powder,
taking
did you?"
sleeping powder, are you? Yeah.
And he says, "Nope." And she says, "Why did you do that?" As he puts it into his bag. And then there's a gun in there, and she says, "Take the gun." And he like grabs it and then puts it back. He's like, "No." Barry says not every problem has to be antagonistic. And Maria's like, "Barry doesn't know what you do." But anyway, the bullet train is about to depart. So he says, "Oh no, I gotta go." And he leaves the gun and he jumps on the bullet train. Now, also, we've seen in the introduction, it opened up, I skipped this scene, in a hospital with this poor little child who's very badly damaged and, like, basically on life support, it looks like. His father has been, like, in his room, like, waiting up all night, seeing if he'll wake up. He didn't, unfortunately. The TV's just, like, on in the background with random, like, morning cartoons from Japan, and then there's, like, a little news interjection. He turns it off during the news interjection. He, like, doesn't want to hear any of this. And then his father, so the boy's grandfather, comes in, and he's saying, you know, father would take care of his family, like, kind of reprimanding his son about, like, how did you let this happen to your boy? What had happened here? This little boy was pushed off a roof. Anyway, so he's feeling all guilty about, like, oh my gosh, I'm the one who let this happen to my son. So he's going to try and take matters into his own hands. He somehow got a message from the person who did this to meet them on the bullet train. And, like, they're in the first class seat, and they give which seat it'll be. So he, like, gets on the bullet train. He's, like, makes his way to the first class part of the train, and he gets to the seat, and there's, like, this young little, I think we're meant to think she's English because she has an English accent. Young little girl who's sitting there. She's not like very little, like teenager-ish is what she looks like.
She looks like she's like 15, 16.
Yeah. Anyway, he like grabs her by the shoulder and like pulls her back and like sees like, oh my gosh, it's this young girl. I thought it was going to be like some powerful looking assassin. And she like puts up this act like, oh no, and like, he says, I'm so sorry, and she, like, tasers him, because she has a taser gun. And so he falls unconscious, and that's the last we see of him for a second. We then jump to these other two guys who are on the train, who is Tangerine and Lemon, and they're these two other, like, hitman kind of guys doing a job. They're talking, like, why are our code names for this Tangerine and Lemon? Like, we're talking about the fruits, right? And why am I lemon? No one likes lemons. And then they start saying, like, everyone likes lemons. You know, there's lemon meringue pie, lemonade, lemon custard. And Tangerine's like, are you really talking about lemons right now? And then the guy that the job they'd done, they had to go collect this boy, I guess, man, from jail and bring him back to his father, who is, we'll get to him in a second. But anyway, so this boy, like, awakens, he'd been unconscious, and they slide on over, and they're like, hey, look, here, we went through a lot of trouble to get you back to your precious papa, and we killed this many people for you, so you better do what we ask of you. And they're like, yeah, we killed like 17 people. No, it was only 16. No, it was 17. And they're like, hold on, we got to go through this again. So then we see like this cute little, it's not cute, this little replay of what they had to do to get this guy out of the hostage situation or whatever that he was in.
Definitely not cute.
It's not cute. It's very
graphic,
gory. But I say it was cute because it has the Engelbert Humperdinck song "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles," like da 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 da.
Oh yeah,
da,
with a weird juxtaposition of like a happy song with like scary things happening.
Yeah. And so like they have to like shoot this entire bit of a mob, and like they get the guy, and then they're like on these motorcycles, and they have these other motorcycles chasing them, and they like somehow get them whacked by a car. And then there's these guys with swords, and they take the swords from the guys and like stab through their necks, and they're just like, each time they count or they kill someone, they're counting like this was 1 and this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're counting. And then finally at the very end, there was like the car they were in had exploded, and some guy like who's just a pedestrian on the street, he literally had nothing to do with any of this, he just like comes up to the car and he's like, are you guys okay? And then the car explodes and he dies too, and they're like, oh, that was 17, that was not our fault, it was not our fault.
Didn't do that. It wasn't us.
And so this kid that they were rescuing, he's like, he has a Russian accent. He's like, you know what you are? You're a liability. My father, he doesn't need a reason to keep you alive. He doesn't need a reason to kill you. He needs a reason to keep you alive. And so this kid's father is this big mob boss guy called the White Death. And his backstory that they thankfully tell us, the story is very good at like telling us the history of everyone that we need to know. Mm-hmm. So they tell us like, well, he was this Russian who came into Japan, and he like worked his way up the ranks of whoever had been running the Japanese mob. They don't come out and say it's the Yakuza. Mm-hmm. So I think in this world it's probably not, because they don't want to get in trouble with that.
Yeah, valid.
So, they like he just worked his way up to like basically the highest position, but he did it really, really quickly. Whereas these other guys who'd like been high ups in the gang, they'd been there since their childhood, and like, you know, they took forever to get into this high place. But you know, once you're in, you're treated like family. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you shouldn't trust this guy. But the leader, he did trust him, but he shouldn't have. So the White Death comes in. He has one of the Japanese goblin masks. I don't know what they're called. Do you know what they're called?
Yes. Oh God. Hang on. It is the Tengu mask.
Yes. So he wears this bright red Tengu mask. I think most of them are bright red. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I very much apologize for my not knowing the Japanese culture. Anyway, and there's this big dramatic scene of the day that he like took over the gang and he assassinated the leader. And there was the one guy who was like, he was spared, like he escaped, came out, you know, relatively unscathed. His wife had died in a fire that was set at his house, but his son had survived. We find that this is a little bit later in the movie, it's fine to tell you now, he was actually the grandfather that we had seen earlier, and his son was the father whose son had been pushed off the roof. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Good. I hope the listeners also say yes.
Listener, tell us yes, we'll wait. Cool, awesome, right.
Thanks, good, okay. So anyway, that's who the White Death is. He's this big, powerful guy who has no allegiances except to himself, and they're taking his son back to him. And they're like, no, he asked for the best. He asked for the guys who did the Bolivia job. And then there's like this quick flashback that we see a few times during the movie of like, we hear chainsaws and it's somewhere in Bolivia and it's raining and they're wearing like these plastic jumpsuits that are covered in blood. And then they just like smack the foot of someone that they've killed, and then there's like piles of corpses all around them. So we don't know what the Bolivia job was, but they did it, and they did it right. So anyway, they were the ones who were specifically asked to retrieve this boy for his father. But now they're scared because they have to do it right or else the White Death will kill them. There's also a case with the boy's ransom in it that they have to deliver. It is a metal briefcase that has a train sticker by the handle. We are now going to go back to Ladybug. He's talking to Maria Beetle again on the phone, and apparently he only does snatch and grabs. And the reason that he's actually even doing this job to begin with is because one of his associates, like in his, I guess, whole criminal organization, had a stomach bug. This guy was Carver, and he's like, oh my god, Carver's the worst. Now I'm stuck doing this. But at least it's just a snatch and grab. I only do snatch and grabs. I don't do any killing or anything. Like, he's very adamant about that. But Maria Beetle's like, okay, just look for the briefcase with the train by the handle. It should be pretty recognizable. He's like, there must be hundreds of bags here on this train. How am I going to find just this one? And he finds it immediately. He's like, oh, I guess it really was that easy. And she's like, but what's not easy is you have to make sure that its owners don't come. And he says, wait, like owners, plural? And he takes the briefcase and just like kind of books it down the train looking for kind of an empty car. At this point, Lemon has been sent by Tangerine to go try and find the briefcase because they're like, why'd you stow the briefcase? You should have it on you at all times. And so he like goes to find the briefcase and it's not there. You see this, comical shot of him like kind of in the distance, just like throwing briefcases off of the little shelves. And he gets down there and he's like, it's not here. It was right here. I swear it was right here. And now it's gone. And they're like, we have to find who took this briefcase. So they're going to go up and down the train, and they don't find it right away, unfortunately. However, we're now going to go back to first class, and this is where the father is finally waking up, and the girl, she's just been, like, there reading her book, and she's like, oh, look, you're finally awake. And he, like, tries...
Insert Skyrim reference here. Sorry, continue.
Okay. The guy is, like, trying to kind of threaten her with a gun. She's like, don't be so hasty. You're going to want to listen to the whole story. And just then, his cell phone rings, and she answers it, and she says, yes, you're at the hospital now, and you can see the boy. Very good. Now, if you don't hear from me every 10 minutes, then kill the boy. And so apparently, this is how she is holding this man hostage now, is she can easily just not communicate with her guy at the hospital.
Yeah.
If the guy who's on the train stops doing her bidding. So anyway, we learn that she is also kind of like her own criminal mastermind. She was called by her parents as the prince. And she's like, you can tell that they wanted a boy, but obviously they have me. And she's just like really prim and proper and like, I know exactly what I'm doing, and my plan is the greatest. And so she wants to kill the White Death. That is her big plan here. And the father is like, that's impossible. You can't do this. And she's like, oh, don't worry. That's the best part. You're going to kill him for me. And she doesn't say exactly how that's going to happen yet, but there are machinations happening. Now, we've got to the next stop on the bullet train. Ladybug is about to get off with the case. He really thinks it's that easy. Like, his luck seems to have turned around. He's ready to go. He's waiting at the door, just, like, waiting for it to open. And it does. And there's this guy in front of him wearing this ridiculous white embellished tuxedo. And he has, like, a little bolo tie with a wolf head on it. And the tuxedo is stained on one side, stained red. And the guy kind of like looks at his like red stain and like looks back at Ladybug. And he grabs this knife from his belt and he like stabs into Ladybug's shoulder. And Ladybug's like, you stabbed me! However, he's fine. It hit just his cell phone that was conveniently stored in his pocket that was right over his shoulder. Not like, more like his chest area, I guess. But anyway, so this guy's just like going after him, trying to kill him. And Ladybug, like, he still has the case and he's like using it as a shield. And then they get into like this like dinner bar kind of car that it was empty, luckily. They're just like doing backflips all over the tables in the bar and like things are being destroyed, and constantly Lady's like, who are you? I don't even know you. And this guy's like, I will never stop hunting you. I will
She
kill
doesn't
you.
even go here.
Ladybug is just so confused. And then the guy like throws the knife at Ladybug's case and it ricochets off the case and stabs into him. He did not have any protective clothing on though.
Oh no.
So he actually dies. There's like just a whole bunch of blood that like just comes spurtering out of this wound. And Bud's like, what? Really? Really? Because one of the other things that he was saying to Maria Beetle earlier is like, I don't even try to kill people and they die around me.
Uh-huh.
And like it just keeps happening. He's like, oh my god, no. And so he like is kind of rifling through this guy's pockets trying to figure out like, who are you? I don't know. And he like props him up on a little chair and puts a blanket over him and like puts a bottle of something in his hand to make it look like he's just like passed out.
Right,
And
yeah.
he's just like sitting there munching on wasabi peas, like just staring at this guy like, how do I know you? Oh, I recognize your face.
Are
but who
you?
are you? He can't get it. He can't figure it out. He also can't contact Maria now because his phone has been stabbed.
Sad.
Yeah. Anyway, Tangerine and Lemon, they're moving up and down the train. They go past first class and he's saying all sorts of swears and like how things are terrible. Not going to repeat the things he says on the podcast. But anyway, he like comes past the prince and the father and he says, oh, excuse me, I didn't realize there was a young lady present. And then he like comes back real quick. He's like, I'm so sorry. Did you happen to see a man with a case with a train by the handle? And the father's like, no. And the prince is like, oh, actually, yes. I saw him go that way. Because at some point, Brad Pitt had come through here. Anyway, so Tangerine like gets all huffy and like goes back the other direction. When they find Tangerine and Lemon, they missed Brad Pitt. They didn't come across him somehow. They come back, they see their boy, and they like he like is passed out against the window, and they like try and smack him to wake him up, and he like flops towards them, and he's dead. He's not just sleeping, he's dead.
Oh no.
And he has like blood coming out of his eyes and his mouth, and they're just like, oh my god, what happened to you? We left you for like 2 minutes, bro. What happened? And then they like prop him up against the window again, like they give him a little pillow, and they put these goofy glasses on him that are from a cartoon character, which also, on this train, there's this child's car that is themed for this cartoon character. So it's just, like, everywhere. And it has this annoying little song, and it looks like this weird little, like, fat cat kind of thing. Is that what you'd say it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an anime cat of some
I think
capacity.
its name is, like, Momiko or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so they have these Momiko glasses that they put onto the kid, and they just, like, make it look like he's sleeping. So there's lots of dead corpses on this train that people are disguising to look like just sleeping passengers. At this point, Brad Pitt has kind of like lost his case and he is freaking out a little bit, and he's like, I just want to get off this train. I don't care about the case, just let me off.
Right, I don't blame him at all.
Yeah. And since they had talked to the prince about like who had the case, and they're like, oh, it's this guy with like these dark rimmed glasses and a hat, they kind of realize that it's him. However, in a cameo appearance, Channing Tatum happens to be on the train as well.
I love Channing Tatum in this movie.
And Brad Pitt sits down in front of him, and he's like, hi. And Channing Tatum's like, is this a sex thing? He's like, no, I need you to wear my clothes for a second. Just pretend to be me. And Channing Tatum, that's a hard name to say fast. He's like, oh yeah, okay, sure, bro, yeah, whatever. And so he takes his glasses and this dumb little bucket hat that he's been wearing this whole time and just like sitting in the car, that's all. Well, Tangerine thinks that he's found, like, oh yeah, this is our guy. He like goes up to him, he's like, oh gosh, it's not you, I'm sorry, bro. And Channing Tatum's like, wow, but I do love an accent. And then later on in the movie, not in the same scene, but later on, Tangerine goes like walking briskly back through the car, and Channing Tatum like looks after him. He's like, wow, he's got a great walk. Let me see what else happens here. This plot's a bit convoluted. I'm a bit lost. Eventually, Ladybug finds another phone and he uses it to call Maria Beetle. And he's like, yeah, I killed this guy, and here's what he looks like. And she's like, you killed the wolf? And apparently the wolf, we now get his backstory. He grew up in Mexico. His mother and father died when he was a small child, but they had given him like this little wolf amulet. He worked his way up the gangs of Mexico. The mob boss of Mexico's name is El Suriguaro. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
During his exploits of assassination, the wolf also like met the girl of his dreams. So like he got married, there's this beautiful ceremony, and El Saguaro was there and invited as like the best man or something like that because they're bros. And then somebody runs into the wolf with wine and spills it all over his beautiful white tuxedo. So he has to like go over and like get it all cleaned up. But when he comes back, he like hears screaming and everyone's there like vomiting blood's dripping out of their eyes, and the whole wedding party, including his bride, dies. But also El Saguaro.
Tragic.
Exactly. So he was the only one left. And now his sole purpose in life is to find who killed his entire family. So that's what has brought him to Japan. But now he's dead. So whatever. It doesn't matter.
He did find the guy.
Well, no. Hold on. He didn't find the guy who killed his entire family. He
That's
found
true.
the guy who, spoiler alert, spilled the wine on his jacket. Brad Pitt had been at the wedding as a, quote, server. He had actually infiltrated the wedding. He was like probably working with whoever it was to kill El Saguaro, but he didn't really play a big part in it. He just accidentally bumped into this guy and spilled some wine. That was not actually part of the plan, though. But anyway, the wolf associates him with that horrible tragedy and is like, you must have been part of it. You're part of the reason why this all happened, so I'm going to kill you too, even though it wasn't really you. The wolf was actually looking for someone called the Hornet, who we'll get to in a bit. At one point, Brad Pitt, he has kind of trapped Lemon and Tangerine in one part of the train, and he like MacGyvers some luggage into the way of the doors between the passenger cars so that they can't get through. But there's this cage that kind of like bursts open while he's doing this, and a snake writhers out of it. Now, all of the, like, news stories that have been going on in the background, like on TVs and things like that, we'd heard it in the hospital at first when the father turned the TV off. There were all these news reports that a very poisonous snake had been stolen from the Japanese zoo. And, like, if you get bit by it, you have 30 seconds before your blood, like, completely loses its ability to coagulate. This was the only part of the movie that made me mad. They said, your blood coagulates and then you die. But I feel like it's the opposite. I think you lose your clotting factors because you're bleeding out of all your orifices. Whatever. I guess is fine. We got the point across.
We both have a different background than I think the writers of this movie.
That's okay. Anyway, so the point is, you'll die within 30 seconds. A hallmark of the poison is that you're bleeding through all of your orifices. And there is an antivenom, but you have to get it in that 30 seconds. And the snake is stolen. And we found out that the snake is on the train.
Snake's on a train.
Yeah. We're now going to talk about the Hornet. So she's called the Hornet, and is she, because she uses the snake venom to kill, and it is her big thing. So anyway, we come across her because she is coming into the dining car where Brad Pitt is still pondering the wolf and who he could possibly be. Brad Pitt has found in the pockets of the wolf that, like, here's what his query was. He sees, like, the picture of her, so he knows what she looks like. Well, she comes in. She has changed into the uniform of, like, one of the train workers. However, this whole time, she had actually been the Momogo character who was, like, in the stuffed outfit in the children's car, like, entertaining them. Because she was also trying to find the case, because she was promised that's where her money was. But she had also stolen the snake for her own devious purposes.
Right.
So anyway, that's why the wolf was there, because the Hornet was there, and he was going to kill her. However, the Hornet says, you stole my case and my snake. And Brad Pitt's like, I don't even know who you are. but he does now because she's the Hornet and he has her picture. They have this fight. She has one little syringe full of the snake venom left before she would need to have made more with the actual snake.
Yeah.
And she, like, stabs it into Brad Pitt's hand as he's kind of pinning her to the ground, and she's, like, not able to, like, stab the syringe, but she's able to just, like, drop it, so it drops into his hand. And he, like, before all of it gets injected into him, he grabs it out and, like, stabs it into her neck and deploys the plunger, so they've both been poisoned now. She also has a thing of antivenom, which she's trying to use on herself, but Brad Pitt uses, like, some karate moves and, like, gets it so that it hits him in the neck instead. And he's like, there, I've got it now. Don't you have an extra? And she's like, no, what do you think? And he's like, and she's like, starts dying and like all this blood is dripping out of her face. And he's like, you've got to be more prepared. You got to have backup. And he's like, oh, wait, I'm mansplaining again. I'm sorry. And she's just like crawling around on the floor, breathing in pain.
Do you need some water?
And you want me to hold your hand? You don't really seem like the hand holding type. And then she just like dies. Obviously. And he's like, oh my God. He like sits there and hyperventilates for a little bit. And he calls Maria and she's like, are you sitting in a fetal position on the ground? And he's sitting on a bench. And he's like, well, I'm not on the ground. And she's like, I told you should have taken the gun. But anyway, eventually it's Tangerine. Tangerine catches up with Ladybug and finds that he has the case. And they're, like, going after each other. It's a big fight, and they're, like... And then, gosh, they, like, pull open a door, and Tangerine, like, flies out the door, but is still grabbing onto Brad Pitt, and, like, he hoists himself back into the train. And then he gets a call right as he's, like, about to strangle Brad Pitt. And he's like, I really think you should get that. It might be important. And it is important. I'm glad he answered it, because it was one of the White Death's, like... cronies saying, you and Tangerine will get out of the train with the case at the next station just to show us that you do have it still and that you're able to follow orders. And Tangerine's like freaking out because he doesn't know where Lemon is. They don't have the case. And Brad Pitt says, do they actually know what Lemon looks like? Because when he was talking to Maria Beetle earlier, he's like, I think the Lemon and Tangerine are on here. And she's like, you mean the twins? They are not twins. One of them is a white guy and the other is a black guy.
They could be fraternal twins. They don't have to be identical twins.
Yes, that's true. They really don't look like any twins in the traditional sense.
No,
we'll just
they
say
don't
that.
look like identical twins like what you think of when you say the word twins.
Right. Like, if you saw them walking on the street, you would not assume they're related.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tangerine says, actually they don't. So he and Brad Pitt, who actually do look a little bit more alike, because they both have like similar hairstyles of kind of like longish, blondish hair. They're both like, kind of sharp-jawed guys, I guess. So anyway, they go out with just a random silver case that they found in the luggage compartment. It's not theirs. They don't know whose it is. Just random case. And there's all these, like, I guess gang guys around. And they are all, like, dressed in, like, studded leather. And they look like 80s biker gang. And so Tangerine comes out and he's like, well, I thought that we would be encountered with, like, some real thugs here, but you guys are just an 80s rock band. And then they're, like, holding the case up, and Brad Pitt's like, look, here's the case. And one of the gang leaders is like, did you open it? And they're like, no, I wouldn't open it. I don't even know the combination. And Brad Pitt just, like, spins the combination lock on it just for funsies. And with his dumb luck, it opens and like all this underwear and clothes spills out and they're like, oh no. And so they have to run back into the train right as the mob is like trying to come after them, but they make it in time and they're like, oh no. Now they know we don't have the case and what's going to happen here. And Brad Pitt's like, I know where the case is though. He thinks he knows where it is. He thinks he had stowed it in a little, like, trash can when he had killed the wolf earlier. Little does he know, the prince had found it when she had come across the wolf, and she's like, I know where the case is now. So they're in a pickle because someone needs to take responsibility for these actions, but obviously Tangerine does not, and neither does Ladybug. We're now going to go into the first class again, and the prince and the father are in a bathroom, and they're trying to, well, Prince is forcing the father to try every single combination to open the case. And she's going to go on kind of like a little reconnaissance mission, and just, I don't remember exactly what she's doing. But she just, like, leaves him there for a bit to go through things. And then, finally, right as she returns, luckily, he opens the case, and there's all this money in it, and he's like, whoa, there's so much money. She's like, oh, look at you, you've got it. And she starts, like, putting explosives into it, so it's basically, like, as soon as the case opens, it's going to explode. Mm-hmm. And he says, that's insane, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm hedging my bets. And then she, like, shows him this gun. She's like, and this is how this is going to work. This gun is loaded with the same mechanism that this case now is. So instead of when you shoot it, it will shoot a bullet, it will just blow up in whoever's face. Now, the White Death, every single person that he has killed, or every single person that he has tried to assassinate him, he has killed with their own weapon. And so the father's like, so you want me to fail. You've just brought me here as a setup. And she's like, exactly, yes. And she had to push his son off the roof because it was the only way to get him on the train, apparently. I feel like there could have been other ways.
You could have threatened to kill his son. Like, there were other options for this. Yeah. But it's fine.
Yeah. Whatever. Just a bloodthirsty little mastermind, I guess. Uh-huh. Anyway, so he's like, that's a stupid plan. It will never work. And she says, no, it's a brilliant plan. Mm-hmm. So I guess if the plan were to go through, he will be caught and the White Death will try to kill him with this gun, but it will explode on the White Death instead. I feel like with explosions, though, you're probably going to get caught in the crossfire a little bit.
You'd think.
Yeah. So... oh, whatever. I guess it's not her problem. She's not the one doing it. That's probably why she's not the one doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, what happens next? This plot is so convoluted. It makes a lot of sense when you're watching it, and I thought I was going to be able to do this because I've seen it a few times now.
You're doing really well.
Thank you. I'm sure some of this has been out of order so far,
okay.
But anyway. More shenanigans happen with people trying to find the case and to find just everybody else who's on this train. Another big thing is that Lemon, one of the other hitmen, he is obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh, yes.
And he has this little sticker book that he carries around. And he keeps telling everyone whenever he's talking to them and meets them, he's like, you know what? I've learned everything I know about people from watching Thomas the Tank Engine. And I can tell exactly who you are just based on all of these characters from Thomas. For example, you're Percy. You're young. You're probably really fun-loving. And that's like what he's telling the kid that they had originally been sent to get. Uh-huh. That's kind of our first introduction to it. Eventually, he meets up with, or he sees the case with the train handle with the father and the prince. And he says, I knew there was a diesel that's been running up and down this train. And I think it's you. And the prince, she's just like playing off like, I'm sorry, I don't know anything. This man is holding me hostage and I just want to go home. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you know what? We're going to play a little game. You're going to raise both your hands if you want to play a game. Great. I knew you'd love it because they both already had their hands up because he's holding them at gunpoint already. He's like, now I can't shoot you both because then I won't get answers. But the game is, you're going to point at the one who's in charge. I'm going to shoot them. And if you both point at each other, I'll shoot both of you. And the father's like, I thought you just said you couldn't shoot both of us. He's like, sometimes you shoot first and come up with the answers later.
Mood.
So he counts to 3. 1, 2, 3. And there's a gunshot. And we see that the prince has pointed at the father, and the father has kept his hands up, has not pointed at the prince. Mm-hmm. So he got shot.
Oh.
Yeah, and they drag him into another bathroom. And then as she's saying, like, oh, thank you so much, sir. I think I have some wire here in my bag that we can wire this door shut so that he can't escape in case he's not dead yet. And Lemon, he says, yeah, you know, it's a funny thing, though. You have a gun in here, and, that doesn't really go along with this whole innocent girl thing. And she's like, no, please, I can explain. He's like, don't come out with you've never seen a gun in your life. He's like, there's been a diesel, and I think it's actually you. And she, just kind of runs away from all this. But somehow, he's managed to put a diesel sticker on her back without her knowing. Also, he's been getting kind of flustered through all of this, and he had a water bottle with him. Earlier on, when he had encountered Ladybug had put the sleeping powder in the water bottle. Yeah, so he's been guzzling this water with the sleeping powder, and he just kind of falls asleep. Or he says, how'd you do that? As he's about to pass out, and he's on the ground about to fall asleep, and she's like, I don't know, I've always been lucky. So anyway, he falls asleep, and then she shoots him with a different gun, not the exploding gun, 3 times. And we're like, oh no, so now he's dead too? ? Sad. Eventually in all of this, Tangerine finds Lemon, thinks he's dead, has this whole emotional, sadness, and then he gets a call from the White Death himself. And he's like, you're the only one left on the train. I've booked all of the seats from there on out to Kyoto, which is their destination. And that's where Tangerine is looking around, and the train is eerily empty. There's no one else on it. And he's like, I'm going to meet you personally at Kyoto, make sure that you have the case and that you have the sun and all that stuff. Then Tangerine sees oh, this random girl is still here. Tangerine doesn't know the girl yet, but he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I was kidnapped, and has the whole thing again. And just as she's walking away, because he's like, I don't need you, just go down the train, get off at the next station, he sees the diesel sticker on her back. And he's like, I know it's you, because Lemon, he knows everything about people, and he would know if it's a diesel. Yeah. So it was his message from the grave. Oh. Yeah. Oh my gosh, how does he die? What happens here?
There's a sword fight.
No. Somehow, gosh, this guy dies before that, somehow. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, listener. I guess it's not full of spoiler alerts, because I can't remember everything that happened here, so you'll have to watch it on your own. But basically, somehow, Tangerine actually dies. They all kind of regroup. Brad Pitt, had thought that the little girl or the prince was actually just a random little girl, and he was sitting with her. He's like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay, we'll get off at the next station, everything will be fine. Well, she purposely gets her bag stuck and is like, I can't leave, don't leave me, I'm scared. And so Brad Pitt gets back on the train. He thought he was almost about to avoid all of the nonsense and shenanigans that are about to happen, but it didn't work. Also, at that station where he did not get off, the grandfather gets on, and so Brad Pitt is talking to the prince and just saying, I don't know what happened. It was supposed to be so easy, and this all happened. And then the grandfather came and, sits down right next to them. And Brad Pitt doesn't know that the train is, purposely supposed to be empty, but there's still all these empty chairs. And so he's like, can you just, find a seat literally anywhere else so that I don't have to tell you twice? And the grandfather's like, no, I'm going to stay right here. And he says something to the effect of I know what you did to the prince. And so she runs away trying to do whatever devious deed she wants. She's still running amok on the train. And then Brad Pitt's like, look, I don't really want to talk right now. And the grandfather's like, I have a story for you. It might benefit. He's like, no, I'm good. And the grandfather's like, it's a short story. I think you'll enjoy it. He's like, no, please no. It's very quick. I'm good.
I don't want a story right now. I'm good, thanks.
And he just goes on. And then the grandfather's like, I will tell it anyway. And just goes, and he basically tells the whole backstory of how the White Death got into power as well, and how he was one of the ones who survived, and he's made it his life's work after that to try and defeat the White Death, but he's not doing it in vicious ways, or essentially. And he has to protect his family. So they decide, we're gonna confront the White Death, we're gonna make this right. Well, again, it's a little fuzzy. Oh my gosh, a little foggy to me.
Fuzzy.
A little fuzzy. It's a little foggy to me of how this all happens. I'm really sorry for this. This is a poor retelling.
You're doing good.
Anyway, they end up finding the bathroom where both the father and Lemon's bodies were stored. And they, like, kind of smack Lemon around a little bit, and he's alive. He isn't dead, even though he was shot 3 times. He apparently wears a Kevlar vest, so he's not shot.
Hooray!
Yeah, so it was just the sleeping potion. However, he finds that Tangerine is actually dead. And oh boy, he is sad. He's real sad. And it comes out that Lemon had shot the father, and so the grandfather is mad at the grandfather is mad at Lemon, but Lemon is mad at Ladybug, because Ladybug, I think, is actually the one who ended up shooting Tangerine.
Yep.
God, they should not have picked fruits as their name. It really is bad. So basically everyone has shot each other, but they all need to work together now and get over it. So they need to come up with a plan. Well, the snake comes along, actually does bite Brad Pitt. He runs into a toilet with it. This is not a toilet that we've seen before. It's a new toilet. And he, takes off his sweatshirt, wrapped around the snake, and, shoves it into the toilet and, seals it shut somehow. And he writes on the top of the toilet seat, snake, don't open.
Don't open, dead inside.
And then he goes back, and the grandfather's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, you know what? I've actually got a dose of antivenom already today, so I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, so he has strange luck. It's not all bad. It's somewhat as good. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they get to Kyoto. Brad Pitt gets off of the train with the case, and he gives it to the White Death, and the White Death is like, and now I'm gonna kill you too, and knocks him down on the ground and has a gun to his head. And Brad Pitt's like, if I may,
who are you?
You're the one who hired all of us to be on the train, right? And the White Death's like, yes, very smart, I was. And he's like, okay, just wondering. And so then we kind of get the whole backstory of why all these people were on the train. So the White Death had a wife who was killed in a drunk driving crash. So she was crashed into. The reason that she was out that night and not him was because he had to go to Bolivia to deal with something that had been ruined by the twins. And so he had to go there himself. Mm-hmm. So he needs the twins dead, because if it weren't for them, he would have still been in Japan, not in Bolivia. And so he would have been the one in the car instead. He also has to kill the Hornet, because when the wife was in the car crash, there was a piece of her rib that punctured her heart, and the only way she could have been saved was if the top-tier heart surgeon was able to perform surgery on her. However, just 2 days before, happenstantially, that heart surgeon had died because he was poisoned by the Hornet.
Oh, yes.
I think in an unrelated job to what was going on here, but regardless, he was still poisoned, and if he had been alive, then the wife would have lived. Mm-hmm. But so the Hornet has to go too.
Most convoluted reason why ever, but it's fine.
Exactly. Also, he actually wanted his son killed, so that's why he allowed the Hornet to be there, because she was in charge of killing the boy. That was her job, not rescuing him, killing him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you had your own son killed? That is messed up. But apparently this kid was the reason the wife was out is to bail him out of jail, because he was up to, no good, whatever. Yeah. He was just kind of a burnout flop. He wasn't a, useful member of society, I guess. And so his father, really didn't even like him. So he wanted him killed, because, again, wife would have been alive if it weren't for him needing to be bailed out of jail, and she had to go out and save him. And then finally, the one guy who's left, the guy who was actually driving the car that did the crash that killed the wife, was Carver. The guy who Ladybug was filling in for. He's like, wait, I'm not Carver. In the flashback, Carver is played by Ryan Reynolds. But anyway, dumb, stupid Carver called in sick, and so instead Ladybug was here in his place. And just then, the White Death was having some of his hench people open the case, and there's a little aside from them, and they're like, why do we always have to be the ones who are opening these things? Like, what if it's rigged? What if we blow up? Well, their worst nightmare comes true. It does blow up.
It is rigged.
Everyone is... It is rigged, yes. There's a huge explosion, and right as the train is leaving the station, Ladybug and the White Death are both knocked backwards into the train right as it starts moving. So now we've got a fight on a train. There's the grandfather, the White Death, Ladybug, and Tangerine still left, as well as a few hench people who just kind of are like on top of the train and throughout the train just for like funsies, I guess. Lemon,
Yep.
Since he's so obsessed with trains, he was the one who like got this going to begin with, and it's going like real fast, and they're coming to the end of the line, and he's realizing like, wait, I don't know how to drive a bullet train, and all the directions are in Japanese. Meanwhile, this whole time, there's this huge epic battle scene going on. And there's guns and there's swords, and the grandfather is confronting the White Death and is like, look, we both had our families completely taken away from us and our beloved wives, but look, we turned out completely different here. And there's like moments where it looks like the White Death is going to overpower the grandfather, but then something happens where he doesn't. Like, they just go back and forth a lot. And then Lemon's, like, trying to protect Ladybug as the train is hurtling forward still. He's like, don't worry, I got this, as these hench people come towards them. Just figure out how to stop the train. And Ladybug actually finds the instruction manual. He's like, don't worry, I got it. But then he accidentally lets it fall out the window, so it's a moot point at that point anyway. However, he does find the emergency brake that's been, like, yanked out of the wall. It's just a few different wires. And he, like, tries, like, just shocking different parts of the wires, and it's not working. Eventually, all the hench people are dead, so it's just, like, our main guys who are left. During all that time, Lemon, he said something like, I'm sorry I shot you. And Brad Pitt's like, I'm sorry that I shot Tangerine. And Lemon's like, don't worry, I have another brother now. And Brad Pitt's like, really? Lemon's like, no, hell no. And then there's one more hench person that is running towards them, and Lemon just like tackles him, and they jump out of the train, which it's on a bridge over a river, and so they land harmlessly in the river. It's fine. Don't worry. He's still alive. But that does leave Ladybug to stop the train. Eventually, that doesn't happen. It just kind of derails itself and comes off the tracks and like goes hurtling down this huge ravine and like into this town, and it's lost some momentum along the way, but like everybody is falling, and we see like this, it's all slow motion, and this coffee pot comes and like whacks Ladybug on the head, and it makes this beautiful clink sound. And magically, everybody who was on the train survived. But the White Death is not doing too well. He has been stabbed a few too many times by the grandfather, who's actually doing surprisingly well in all of this. And he says, he's all mad. He's like kind of blubbering away because he can't really talk very well anymore because of his injuries. And he's just yelling at Ladybug. He's like, where's Carver? I wanted Carver. And Ladybug's like, I'm sorry, Carver had a stomach bug. He couldn't come. And just then, like, the White Death is trying to shoot him, and his gun doesn't work, so he pulls out a different gun. Well, it was the gun from the prince. Which, I'm sorry, I skipped a whole important part. Right as the White Death got on the train, the prince was there, and she's like, hello, father.
Dun, dun, dun.
In case you're like me and you didn't realize until the moment of the reveal, she was the White Death's daughter. Steph, when you saw the movie, you knew it way ahead of time.
Conservation of characters.
Yeah, so anyway, she says, I've come to kill you, father, and I'm much better than that loser ever was, and you should have paid me more attention. And the White Death says, you were just never part of my plan.
Weird.
And so she, like, he steals her gun. She's like, go ahead, shoot me then. So it looks like she's gonna be the one to actually kill the White Death. But he doesn't. He just like holds the gun out and he goes, bang! And then like giggles and hands it back to her. And she's like all bummed out, like your plan didn't work. It's really sad.
But like she was also very close to the exploding gun and probably would have died too.
Yeah, probably. So I guess it's all for the better. I just think it's so funny. He just like, bang! He just like giggles. Anyway, that gun has now come back. And he like, it's the one gun that he can find still. And he's trying to shoot Ladybug with it because all the other guns are out of bullets. And it does explode in his face. And like the side of his head falls off. And it's like these really gruesome special effects. And he just kind of like slumps to the ground. And they're like, oh, wow. Okay, we won, I guess. And then in the distance, someone like cocks another gun. And like there's the prince with this like huge machine gun, and she's like, and now I am the White Death, and my luck has delivered my father's body to my feet. And they're just like, the hubris on this kid, she really needs some help.
Get this chick therapy.
Yeah. And just then, right as she's about to like shoot them with this huge gun, a truck labeled Tangerines comes and hits her and kills her. And so now it's finally done. Hooray! Maria Beetle drives up, and she's like, oh my gosh, what happened here? You really are unlucky. And Ladybug is like, did you come to rescue me? She's like, did you need rescuing? Which obviously he did. And he's just like, kind of delirious at this point, and like, you're the best handler anyone could ever ask for.
He always had a weird day.
Yeah. And she's like, don't worry, there's a banana in the car. Do you want a banana? He's like, yeah, I do. Wow, that's a really nice car. And then a telephone pole falls on the car right before they get in it. And she's like, oh my gosh, your luck. And he's like, no, maybe the universe just didn't want me to have a banana, Yeah, see how I'm spinning it around here? She's like, yeah, I see what you're doing. It's what she's been trying to do to him the whole time. And so they just kind of like walk off into the sunset. Like he finds the bag of wasabi peas again that he was eating before. And he's like, yeah, this is a weird day. But, I think it's really a turning point for me. And then that's kind of the end. There's a one little post-credit scene where after Tangerine had jumped in the river, he like is just kind of walking along the road. And he comes across this truck, of a Tangerine truck. And he like makes basically like Grand Theft Autos. Grand Theft Autos. The driver out of the truck. So now he has the Tangerine truck. And it's like, of course it's Tangerine's. Tangerine was dead. It was meant to be. And he just goes like hurtling through the city. And he like sees the prince in the way. And he's like, yeah, I gotta get her. And smashes into her. And she's like, of course it's fate. Like everything happened for a reason. Tangerine killed the girl. So that's finally the end. Sorry, that was long, convoluted, probably didn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a great movie. Please go see it. It is a good movie. I think it might actually be streaming now as well, but it's real good.
It's a masterclass in character storytelling. I do recommend. Just like the way you get information exactly when you need it is just perfect.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of little details that I did so bad about telling you about. So please just go watch it and see how masterful it is. I think it's also a book, so maybe read it too. I think I'll probably read it. If it is a book,
let me know, because I would love to read it.
Yeah, I will. I can't say enough good things about it, though. Go ahead. Unless you don't like gore, in which case don't watch it.
Yeah, it is pretty gory.
Yeah, lots of shooting as well, so if that bothers you, please don't.
Brad Pitt is amazing in the movie. He's hilarious.
Yeah, after we went to see it, we saw it together. You were saying like it's weird to see Brad Pitt in like a funny role, which I have not actually seen a lot of Brad Pitt movies, I realized, but I guess it is.
He does very well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that. End of Mastermind, except our quote. Would you like our quote again?
I would like our quote again.
Okay. What if I told you I'm a mastermind, and now you're mine? It was all by design. 'Cause I'm a mastermind.
Is it our queen, Lord Tay Swift?
Yes, it is. It is. It is the song Mastermind. which
Heck yeah.
it's very weird how I came to this. I had heard on another podcast that this song existed. I had not heard the song, but I'm like, I'm sure it says something about Mastermind in those lyrics. And so I went and looked it up, and sure enough, it does. And I did listen to the song as well. It's actually kind of cute, and like, it kind of sounds like, oh, she's so devious. She's a mastermind of like crafting her relationships. But then at the end, it's like, oh, you knew all along that I was doing this, and you liked me anyway. Sorry to spoil the song in case you haven't heard it. It's cute. I like it.
It's a cute song. I enjoy it. I do love T Swift. She's baller.
Yes. I guess we should end the podcast because it's getting long.
We should get the word, and then we should end the podcast.
Yeah, what's next?
Generator, help.
The next word is solo.
Solo. My husband's gonna know I had to do this. Bring me Solo and the Wookiee.
You know, this is the difference between you and me. I hadn't even thought about Star Wars. But
spoiler alert, I have a strong suspicion I will be telling you all about Star Wars next time.
You know, since Solo is the only Star Wars movie I've seen, maybe I'll bring that and I can tell you about Star Wars.
Heck yeah, Star Wars special. Spoiler alert for the next podcast episode, guys, but I bet you could have guessed with the name Solo as our word that was rolled.
Except probably not. I probably will bring something different. Okay, but anyway, we really should end now. It's been long enough.
With that, as usual, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Allison.
And this is Nerd of the Week. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast, and remember, this is not a pyramid scheme.
Okay, thanks, and bye!
Bye!